Why, hello there, varmint. I'm Bookface, and I'm here to talk about some rootin' tootin' cowboy bootin'. No, enough of that. Getting a bit cringy anyways. It's weird, it's hard to understand. The bit's over. Understand? Well, tarnation, suppose I'll just leave then. But just you remember, partner, everybody needs to sleep eventually. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. Well, I'll just see myself out. Bless your heart. Okay, well, now that that is dealt with, we can get on with the video. So, Lumberjack folklore is a bunch of goofy stories that are vaguely assembled into a veritable mountain of nonsense. And since this is my 15th video on the topic, I clearly like to climb that mountain. Did I actually make a decent metaphor for once? Wow. And also returning in this video is the newest edition of Bookface Betrays His Own and Complains About Books. As usual, skip to here if you don't care about my ramblings. So all the creatures in this video in particular are from the book Mythical Creatures of the USA and Canada by Walker D. Wyman. It's a very interesting book. It's also nearly impossible to find. I don't go fully into the ordeal that was finding this book, but simply put, it was very difficult. Searching every online database I could, searching libraries well beyond my range, and ultimately finding one and just having to go through quite a process just to get it for a couple weeks. I'm tired. So, naturally, I had to make a video after I spent literal months trying to get a hold of this resource. And only a small amount of bitterness later, here we are. So, let's jump right in. Woo! First up, we got the Rattler Rabbit. No, I said get out of here. Get out of here. I'll be back, partner. It's a creature from the Mimbre Valley of the American Southwest. It has the scientific name Lepus castaneta, which translates to rabbit chestnuts in Latin, which I do not understand. Rabbit, sure. Chestnuts? Is it roasting on an open fire? It has the body of a rabbit all the way down to its waist, where it then turns into this big rattlesnake tail. Kinda reminds me like a Capricorn in structure. Yo guys, new star sign just dropped. And this thing is so obscure, even in my resource, that it's only known through Native American pottery. Now my resource didn't specify which Native American tribe this was from, but quick little search of the area and I'm pretty sure it comes from the Membreno Apache or Chiricahua Native Americans. And considering the first one has Mimbre in it and is from the Mimbre Valley, I'd say that's probably an accurate guess. And following along that little assumption, I found this bowl, which is pretty spot on to the admittedly limited description. That being said, I couldn't find this bowl on any reliable source. It was mostly just like replica sites and at least one from Pinterest, and this is the only example I've found, so it's a bit iffy, you know, it happens a lot with folklore. And that really speaks to the obscurity of this creature that my references nailed it. It's thought to have lived in the Mimbre Valley 1,000 years ago and is now presumed to be extinct. Dang, even the nonsense animals are going extinct now. You believe this, Pangea? Yes, I'm working on zoology. You're a pangolin, not a badger, so don't badger me. Next up, we have the bog hop. This is a creature from the North Shore of Lake Superior. It's often seen in Minnesota, specifically in an area that's only really inhabited by trappers and fishermen, at least at the time that it was sighted. The story of this creature comes from Marjorie Edgar, who got it from a trapper in the area. It was also sometimes seen in smaller lakes between Lake Superior and the border of the U.S. It has the scientific name Castoralsis platycerus. Now, the first part of the name translates to beavers, and then the next part doesn't have a very clear translation, but it could just mean waxy plate, which doesn't make a lot of sense because I couldn't find any direct translation.
A few moments later.
Okay, so here's my little game theory. In a previous video where I talked about Bildad, I speculated that since the platypus was discovered within the range of time as these myths, that since some of these myths seem oddly similar to a platypus, that some lumberjacks might have heard about that scientific discovery and been like, that's stupid, and just started making jokes about it. And with that in mind, the platycerus could just be platy from platypus, and then cerus usually has to do with deer. Yeah, never before this series did I anticipate an abundance of platypi in lumberjack folklore. The creature's described as half beaver and half moose, has small moose antlers and a large beaver tail. It's known to swim like a beaver and leap through the air with its tail, or we're mixing in kangaroo again. They're very shy creatures and hop away into the swamps and disappear whenever whenever anyone sees them. Don't worry, I'm just going to get a carton of milk. They're very seldom seen since summer cabins were built in that area. Overpopulation messes with the animals again, huh, Pangea? No, I don't know when the next zoology video is going to come out. Back off. Put that knife down. Lastly, we have the three-tailed Bavaloris. Anytime I read that name, I just have to pause for a minute, and I don't know why. I think it's like my brain adjusting to make sure that it didn't just short-circuit. It has the Theriornis tricauda unicornis. I'm not really sure if scientific names can have three parts to them. Could be a subspecies, apparently. Which actually kind of makes sense, because in my other research, I found something called a ring-tailed Bavaloris, which I have to talk about in a video someday, because I haven't been able to find it anywhere else other than this very obscure resource. So I guess this would be a subspecies of the Bavaloris. There's a lot more scientific thought put into this than I expected. Or they just wanted to put in a third term and didn't feel like mashing up the words together. The translation of this name is roughly animal bird, three-tailed unicorn, which is certainly a unique name. It's described as being half animal and half bird. You seeing this, Pangea? Its front half is covered in feathers and the back half is covered in hair. It has legs like a cow or a buffalo, a horn like a corkscrew coming from its forehead, and 3 tails. And guess what? All the tails are different. Well, aren't you fancy? Well, you only got 3. I got a cat with 9 tails. Haha. That would have been a better spot for a Pokemon reference than a random weapon reference. One tail ends in a barb as sharp as a spear, which it uses for fighting. I did not expect this thing to have shank. I'm just gonna back away now. Its second tail is broad and flat like a beaver's, and it's used like a chair. Is it really that hard to sit down that you need to use your tail as a chair? Also, isn't that still a part of your spine? Wouldn't that hurt? I'm not so sure about that one. And the third tail fans out like a peacock's and was used to ward off deer flies and black gnats. So you got this gorgeous peacock-like feathery tail, and it's a fly swatter. Well done, evolution. It was actually thought that lesser animals paid tribute to the three-tailed Bavaloris, and it would often sit for hours admiring its colorful peacock tail. But the problem is, other animals learned about this vulnerability and would specifically attack it when it was too distracted looking at its own tail. Whoa, Narcissus, you look a little different there. And none have survived or been preserved to this day to be kept in a museum. Gee, you don't say. So there are 3 more creatures from Lumberjack folklore. These were some weird ones, which is my favorite thing. My only note is that, despite the fact that these are utter nonsense 99% of the time, it's weird that I end up finding actual science stuff out from it. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe. If you like the drawings, information, and the creatures shown here, check out my website where I put all my research in one place. It's very cool. I'd highly recommend it, obviously, because I made it. Also, even though I'm not good enough to earn money from this, I have a Patreon if you for some reason feel like I deserve money, and I'll see you next time. Bye!